Hi, my name is Barbara Mack, and I'm a student in the curriculum course. I have Amber Tranthrom with me today, and we're going to talk about the curriculum as far as what Ms. Tranthrom sees curriculum to be and how to better improve our curriculum. Amber is an AmSty math specialist with JSU. Hi, Ms. Trantham.
Hey, how are you doing, Ms. Mack?
Fine. How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for participating in
No
this
problem.
project with me. I really appreciate it. Amber, how do the specialists assess and revise a systematically integrated curriculum, both horizontal and vertically, that engages our students in rigorous, relevant academic challenges across the academic disciplines?
All right, so our role is a little different with the State Department. We try not to promote any one curriculum because there's a lot of good in all curriculums and there's a lot of bad. When we say curriculum, we're referring, of course, to textbooks and resources. So in terms of us, we want teachers, administrators, instructional coaches, everyone to be assessing curriculum based on how it meets the standard. And with the new math standards that we have, there's a lot of tools that can be used to assess that. I like to use some of the unpacking documents that explain the standards. And I love Zimba's wiring diagram that lines it up based on when it's developmentally a time to introduce each one. But I think that in terms of this vertical alignment, the best tool is our standards themselves because they have the critical focus areas and they tell us, these are the most important things at each grade level. They are not ready for the next grade level, the material that they're going to receive unless they have a mastery of those critical focus areas. And so what we encourage teachers to do is to use a variety of resources. The textbook is, of course, one of them. You have expertise within your school. That's also a great resource. There's a ton of stuff available, whether it's online or whether it's AmSty tools or whether it's other things that the system has adopted other than just their standard textbook. So in terms of making it relevant and including the rigor, the best advice we can give is use the best tool at your disposal. And sometimes it's the textbook and sometimes it isn't.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem.
How will the specialists assure that instructional objectives and the curriculum goals are aligned?
Well, again, to me that comes back down to knowledge of the standard. And so when you say curricular goal, you most certainly want to make sure that the textbook meets the standards. And at the same time that we say that, one thing we know, one thing textbook writers have told us is that, and all textbook companies will tell you this, they were never designed, a textbook was never designed to be taught cover to cover in a single school year. It'd be impossible. It provides us all the possible resources we might need for our students. If there's missing pieces, they want to be able to go back to that. If you have a large population of EL students, they want to have the resources for that. If you have students who come to you somewhat advanced and you want to provide challenge for them, they have those materials as well. But sometimes teachers are unaware of that. They feel tied to the textbook or bound to the textbook. So it's a big conversation with the teachers. First of all, making sure they understand the standard, and then making sure the tools that provided align with those standards.
That's true, because in the classroom, when I was in the classroom, I felt compelled to teach from chapter to chapter in the textbook, and I'm glad you brought that point out, that those textbooks are a resource for us, and I think too often teachers don't realize that they feel obligated to teach everything that's inside the textbook. And even sometimes we have a feeling of pressure, saying that, I've got to meet this chapter, I've got to teach this chapter. And once we realize that, that some textbooks are aligned more closely to the objectives and then some are not. So once we realize that we can just pull from the textbook as well as other resources. I found this question to be very interesting on motivation. How would you motivate the faculty members to adhere to the prescribed state standards?
All right, so this is one of my favorites because this is one thing I think we always are striving to do. And one thing my cohorts and I are constantly discussing is how do you move people? And the truth is if we reflect back on our own practice, nobody likes to be told what to do. Nobody likes mandates from above, especially when there's no reason or given or it appears that way. So because our work is a little different, we don't have, I can't come in and tell anybody what to do. I don't have any power on that. My goal is is improvement for teachers, no matter where they are, to have them reflect on their practice. And in terms of us having the power to motivate them, I always try to keep our conversations uplifting, make sure it's support as they design. If I think back to when I was in the classroom and when someone said, what is it you need? How can I help you? Then it put it in my court. I could reflect on where I needed to grow. Through those reflections, if I pick what I want support in and then it's provided, you have a whole nother ballgame there. You have the opportunity to actually, move people. I have a lot of analogies for this one, but my favorite one is, my mother-in-law can tell me that I need to lose weight. I already knew that. I don't need her to tell me. I don't need anybody else to tell me that I need to lose weight. But I know where my weaknesses are. And if I look at that and if somebody says, look, you've said this, you said you're struggling with this, what can I do to help you? And I give them, specific guidelines, this is what I need, then I'm going to be more open to that support. One thing we do know, though, is that the better a teacher understands the standards, the easier their life can be, because what we used to teach was a 1,000 different things, and now it is very, very focused. And so a lot of times we can get buy-in from teachers when we say, hey, this, let me show you that, that your job is just this. You don't have to teach that, right? Like that's next year's material. You don't have to worry about that. So, so providing, education where they know these are the essential skills I have to accomplish this year, making teachers realize that, that sometimes they're making their job harder than it has to be. That can be helpful. But another thing is we always want to be models for our students. And we can't expect them to be learners of new things if we as teachers aren't the same way. So that is our goal, motivation and encouragement, because this is not an easy job. And I think recognizing that as well, and that teachers have a lot of struggles, some that we would be aware of and some that we wouldn't, and taking that into account makes it, and that's important.
That's what I like about you. The other day when I was in here, I had to go home and I had to reevaluate our conversation because I played it over 1,000 times in my head. And then I kept asking myself, were you being supportive? Because our jobs is to support the teachers, So, and I had to reevaluate that. I said, well, maybe I shouldn't have said, the kids are missing this. Maybe I should have asked Ms. Tranthrom, how can I help to support them in teaching those standards?
I think we all, this job is hard because on the outside you can see a lot of things.
That's true.
And but the fact is, no matter what I see, I can't convince somebody to change unless they see it. But now that, like you said, there's ways conversation we have to get people to see that this is time for change.
Yes. But I played that conversation over, and I've learned a lot from you from that conversation. You'll just be surprised.
Just know that we're learning too. We mess it up on a regular basis.
Because I took a whole nother approach, and I'm going to take another approach to add it. Because I like what you said about supporting. Everybody wants somebody to support them instead of saying what's wrong. Tell me how I can fix it, or make our relationship good enough so we can sit down and talk about it and work together to fix it. And that's what type of attitude you bring to us every time you come to our school.
Please
and
know
we
that.
Appreciate that.
Please know that we mess it up too, and we it's just not a perfect thing. You want to be helpful, but it's hard sometimes.
How will you or our specialists work with the stakeholders to identify instructional and curriculum needs that align with the district's shared vision and available resources? And I hope you talk a little about JSU about that.
So I think it's important. I think one mistake, I don't know that it's a mistake, I'm going to say we could have been more efficient with our time. Rather than, I think in the past, AMSTI specifically has come in and tried to work with every single teacher, whether they wanted it or not. And we've had a big shift in the last couple of years where we are focusing on those who are open to change, those who are open to growth and who want the support. I think that's important. So I think one way that we can, whether it's us or other instructional leaders, is to identify leaders within your school based on their own desire to participate in things like that. And in terms of how we or other instructional leaders or administrators can help, I think it's so important to listen to the voice of the teachers, whether those be the teacher leaders or maybe the however you identify them, the people. But you've got to take into account, because the teacher in the classroom knows the needs. They know the students' needs. They know what's missing in the curriculum. And again, if you base that off of teacher leaders, people who are invested in their craft, then that's probably the best bang for your buck. Listening to them will help you focus on the specifics, because I think that's another thing we fail at as schools, is we'll try to work on 85 things. It's got to be focused. So look at the patterns and discuss that with stakeholders. And I think the stakeholders are more than just the teachers. I think you need to consider parent opinion, take into the opinion of the community in which you live, whether that be the churches, the businesses, the product that we're sending you. What can we do better to service them so that they are a better product when they leave? And there's a lot of resources for that.
Could you explain a little bit how you work with the staff and others to accomplish our goals?
Ours is support as you design. So it's basically however the leadership sees it. And again, because you know your teachers and you know their needs, it would not make sense for me to come in and just in a 5-minute walkthrough or any type of scenario like that and say, oh, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. I'm not a curriculum specialist. We are content specialists, K-5 math, but that's it. That's my knowledge base. And in order to help a staff, again, we focus on what is it you need, whether that's professional development or whether that's working with teachers one-on-one and modeling lessons in the classroom. As long as they design it, they explain what they need, then to us that's the biggest bang for our buck. That's how we like to do things. One thing we don't like to do, although we don't mind providing professional development, one major downfall is to provide it and then walk away. Even if it's nothing more than us, spending time with you so that you can continue to sustain these ideas after we leave, then at least that's something. But we just don't want to be in the business of throwing, the spray and pray. Just when we throw something at you and best of luck to you, because a lot of times when teachers receive new material, new information, and they don't have time to put it into practice, it disappears.
One thing I've learned in the research too, also, Ms. Tranthrom, that professional development is an ongoing process.
Yes,
we
no
need
doubt.
that, constantly. How do you monitor and assess the instructional programs and activities and materials?
All right, so we are not in the business of monitoring or assessing. Now, and here's the reason why. In order for me to service teachers, I need to train them to be able to do that about their own practice, because we're not. We have 157 schools. We're not, there for very long when we are there. So what we want teachers and administrations and instructional leaders to do is for them to look at how they can assess it. But rather than, there's some great long-term assessments. I know we have the ACT Aspire. Different schools use Scantron or STAR or STI assessments. There's all kinds. But what we as math specialists are hoping is they look at the day-to-day evidence, the formative assessment, the student evidence, because I find that, and I was very guilty of this myself, that we think our kids know it. We can assume our kids know it, and so it's much more powerful to have that student evidence to prove it. So we ask that everybody assess their work through the student evidence. What does the student evidence say? What does the data tell us?
Good. I'm learning that word too, evidence. I'm learning how to look at the evidence.
It takes the pressure off of you know, someone in our role, because instead of saying, well, you're not doing this, or you didn't do this, and in truth, how many times have, I know this has happened to me, I've taught something and I thought I killed it, and at the end, you know, none of the kids can do it. It takes, you know, the blame out, because the blame is, you know, could I do better? Probably, but it takes the blame out when we say, well, what we did, these kids are still struggling with it, and that's really the bottom line. What can I do to get them where they need to go?
That's true. How do you use the diagnostic tools to assess, identify, and apply instructional improvement?
So same kind of thing there, and we typically stay away from that unless teachers ask us to look at the evidence with them. And we try to do it through questioning rather than saying, well, you know, none of your kids can do this. We try to, you know, what is the learning target? What is your expectation? What do you think would be what all students should be able to do at this point in the year? And then based on that, what does the student evidence say? Do you think where are you in your practice? Because, and this is pretty common, that you know, students sometimes come behind. So rather than just blindly moving forward, we want teachers to make good instructional choices based on where their students are. So rather than just moving forward, we want them to assess where their students are, and if they're not, as a class, not ready to move forward, you know, how are you going to change your instruction to meet the needs of the students? So for me, this one goes right back to student evidence as well.
What's the greatest difficulties of your position?
Okay, so for me, this is the word good. The word good is our detriment. I think we have, as teachers, have a tendency to compare ourselves to the person next door, or the person within our own system, and think, you know, what I'm doing is good, but good is no longer good enough for our kids. And I want it's weird, you know, and you're probably in a similar position. Before I took this job, I thought that was every teacher's mentality, that no matter where I am, I'm going to continue to grow so that I'm a better servant, a better, you know, as long as my knowledge grows, I can continue to grow my students as well. And to my own heartbreak, I figured I'd have discovered in this role that that's not true for every teacher, unfortunately. This idea of, you know, my scores are good, I don't need to make any changes to my practice, and so that word good is my biggest challenge, is to get people to see I liken everything just about to, not because I'm a really good person, but just because I'm trying to do better. It's our walk with God. We will never be perfect. We want to always be working towards that. Now, if I try to change everything at once, I'm going to fail miserably. So I start with a focus. This is where I'm going to start. And once I've got this under control, now I'm going to move to this area of my life. And so I think about this. I apply this to my practice and everything I do, because it is applicable with teachers. Where is it you can grow? Let's start here. Pick one place. Don't try to change everything at once. You'll fail. It'll be impossible, and you'll be beat down and discouraged. So start small and continue to grow, because perfection will never be achieved. We're human, but if we continue to grow, then that's really our goal.
I like that. That's true. What's the factors that interfere with achieving your goals and your objectives?
Oh goodness. Okay, so I have two different things. Like, obviously, you have people who fall into that. Well, I'm good enough. I don't need to change. So those who are resistant, and some people will be very vocal about it. You know, I don't agree with you, and that's okay. I think that I have to get to it, and that's hard, and I'm sure it's hard for anybody in this position. I don't have any power, so I can't make anybody change. So I have to recognize when I've hit the resistance and be willing to go, that's okay, we're allowed to disagree, and that's okay, and walk away from something rather than, you know, set a bridge on fire. So that's hard. The second thing is, in our position, we don't make any laws or any requirements in terms of instruction that goes on in the classroom. We do want everybody to be standards-based, first and foremost, but sometimes schools will put in, or systems, and this happens all over the place, and I taught in a school that did this, required compliance. You will do this, no matter what. When we take decisions away from teachers, I don't necessarily think that's in our best interest, because even if you have visible compliance, they do it while we're around. The research tells us that as soon as we walk out the door, and we can't be in every place at once, that that they go right back to their old habits or the things that didn't work. So an obstacle I have is when schools have this required mandate in place, and whether they're sticking to it because they're just compliant, or they're sticking to it because I'm there and they think that I expect that as well, it can be a hindrance as well.
That's true, that's true. How would you characterize your curriculum, or our curriculum? Do you think it's knowledge-centered, learner-centered, or society-centered? And why would you choose that characterization?
All right, again, we're not curriculum specialists, and so because of our core belief is that, teachers make the best instructional choices for the needs of their students, but it has to be made by somebody who's a reflective practitioner. So in saying that, my hope would be that the content that is presented, no matter what curriculum it comes from, is a good balance for all of those.
Yes. I'll be there shortly, okay? Miss Hill? I'll be there shortly.
Because we most certainly want to increase our knowledge and student knowledge, and we want to be focused on the learner, and student engagement is required. I mean, if you don't have student engagement, it really doesn't matter how wonderful everything is, but you cannot lose sight of the culture, the world that the students are growing up in, and that is beyond just the diversity in religions and race and everything else. It's beyond that. It comes down to the world our students will grow up in, this technology saturated world, and how they will cope with it. So it has to include all of that, so balance is a requirement. I really couldn't, for me, if one of those was the focus, it'd be incomplete.
Oh, okay. That's a good answer. That's a good answer, because all three of them are very important in order to educate the children. Thank you so much,
No problem.
Amber. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate
No problem.
it. Thanks.